Item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. Ms. Darby? Thank you, Ms. Darby. Any questions on the consent agenda? If there are no questions, we'll move to number 7.
So number 7, we have recognition, and I will ask on Thursday for us to move this up probably as quickly as possible before visitors. Oakland High School is being recognized at the County Commission at 6, so if we can get them here to be recognized and get them to the County Commission to be recognized as well. We also have Mr. Football from Smyrna High School, Mr. Carter. He will not be with us on Thursday. We invited him, but he is actually going to graduate early and move forward with his career, and so we offered him to be here on Thursday to recognize him. We're going to recognize the rest of the Mr. Football finalists and semifinalists on January 5th, but he is going to go ahead and be an early enrollee at whatever college he announces to go to tomorrow. But he won't be here. We're not leaving him out. We offer that. He just won't be here. So,
Number 8.
Number 8, the previous board, goodness gracious, we started talking with RSP and Rob, I don't know, originally maybe last December, January, February. It's been a while. Took some time to get it through the approval process, the funding, all those different types of things, but this is step 1 in our overall view of enrollment as a district. So this is going to be our enrollment analysis. The next section, while he's pulling that up, is going to be our capacity analysis, and I believe you started a couple of those tours today, correct, Rob?
That is correct.
Yep, and then he will do a zoning, and his group will do a zoning plan after that, and that is for our kind of March, April timeline. So just want to give you an update. This is the first one. I sent the report to everybody on Friday. Very nice work, very impressed. Thank you guys for your work.
Right.
So,
thank you. Good evening.
oh, yeah, sorry. This is a ton of information that we are going to be going over, so if we have some generic questions that we can answer probably pretty quickly once we're finished with the presentation. Those are, of course, perfectly appropriate, anything the board wants to ask, so that we can make sure you get the most information possible. Some of them may be lengthy conversations. Schwartz and I talked beforehand, and it's perfectly appropriate and recommended that if you have real specific questions, let me know, and then I'll submit an entire document for him to look through so that he can get us all of our questions answered in writing.
Outstanding. Yeah, so when I take you through this presentation, I'm going to have you at about 100,000 foot perspective. And like Dr. Sullivan said, we'll drill into some of those things as you have questions at a later date. As you got this information, there we go. In the report, we've set some things up so that you can look at this as a standalone and not need my team here to tell you what's in there. So look at some of these intro pages. The first with like expectations of what you can get out of this. There's a little bit more information for those who are not familiar with RSP and the work that we do with school districts. This has really been an incredible journey to know some of the facets of how this community works, and we'll talk about some of them because I think it's playing into what we're seeing with some of the enrollments, building trends, demographics, and whatnot. We've broken the presentation into really these 5 components. I'm going to spend most of my time on really 1 through 4. The appendix is just so you can drill a little bit deeper on things we've seen other boards want to look at in greater detail. Specifics with some of the developments, some of the demographics. So part 1 is enrollments and demographics. Part 2 is developments. Part 3 is projections. And then part 4 is some of the next steps. Think of this as volume 1, right? So this is the status of our enrollment, demographics, and developments. Volume 2 is going to be the capacity component. That starts really in January, but I took some time today knowing that we have a couple of our elementary buildings that are incredibly full, right? And they're using every square inch. And so I think one of the things we heard from the board is, can we maybe move quicker on some zoning rather than waiting till the 24-25 school year? I don't have an answer yet for that. That's forthcoming. Today I just went through 6 of the elementary buildings to start that conversation of what is functional space in our facilities and what can we do with those spaces.
Would you mind sharing which ones you went to today, by chance, if you can remember?
Oh, I have a list. Because I'm old, I sometimes forget things. Started out with Blackman Elementary. That was kind of exciting. We had a tornado drill there. Then Browns Chapel, Stewart's Creek, Rocky Ford, Dave Urey, and then Stewartsboro. So those were the buildings I went through today. Great people to work with. They helped kind of get some arms around what's happening in these buildings and how are those programs functioning. So just the start of that.
Thank you.
So if we begin at this ultimate 100,000-foot view, I always like to look at 3 things for the district to take away. So page 6 is that. So what's happening with your enrollment? It's growing, right? And it's going to continue to grow, and you'll see where it's going to grow and how it's going to grow when we get into that section of the reports. Capacity, we're starting to examine that. That will really make more sense when we line the capacities up with what our forecast is. And specifically what was asked was, don't use any of the existing capacities. Let's look at this as this third unbiased source. We come in with our team, we evaluate the buildings, we say, here's what the capacity is. There'll be some conversation that at some point is going to happen with administration where if, let's say, we have differences on what a capacity was and what we're saying it is, there'll be some collaborative efforts in that part to try to figure out where is those differences. But in the meantime, we're starting the data. The district's given us floor plans, schedules, all sorts of things that we're starting to plug into our systems. We'll know what capacity is here, volume 2. The third part is development, and you have a lot of it, right? And it's happening in many places. Was a great challenge to put those on some of the maps because some of the things we'd start out in conversations with the county or the cities, and then 2 months later, there's something new. So it was pretty ongoing. So there are lots of development. Many visuals in this presentation to give you a sense of the district. So we'll start out here with the district boundary. Solid colors are the city limits. We then broke into your existing elementary boundaries, your middle school boundaries, and of course your high school boundaries. So everything that we try to work on with enrollment and demographics gets things back to some sort of geography. This is why here on page 11 I'm showing planning areas, which are the green lines, and inside there those are dots. Those are years in which those units were built. But everything that we do for our forecasting goes back to these planning areas. So is it a single family home? Is it an apartment? Is it a condo, mobile home? All of that makes a difference in what we think can happen for a yield rate of kids that you will serve at some point in the future. Again, those planning areas are connected to a sophisticated forecast model, so statistics. And some of the variables I've listed off on the right-hand side, it's not just limited to that. There's other variables as we start to unearth them in the communities. We're trying to understand how fast will we see change. So for instance, if it's a development that built, let's say 15 years ago, it's going through a subdivision life cycle. So are we starting to see more kids there, or have they grayed out, and is there more years that will ensue before we start to see kids? So again, back to math, back to data. I think that was one of the things the board has asked is we want to be able to base our decisions on the best amount of data that we have available. So some insights that we started to work through that for you, this is like maybe normal. But for us, as we looked at this isn't what we always see in every district. So we have the Murfreesboro City Schools that continues to expand as the city limits expand, right? So that's a little bit different than what you may see in some districts. We have some dual zones, right? So back probably when you made some changes, you kept things going to different places, so we had to factor that in. Then we also have elements of what we classify as schools of choice or program specialties that determine where students may go. So let's say the alternative high schools, let's say other programming that expands out where it's 8-12. So again, we've listed each of those buildings up there that we try to factor in when you look at the projections and you look at the attend numbers. And we'll go over some of that because I do want to leave you with an understanding of those visuals, but there's a difference on where students reside and then where they actually attend the buildings. And so we gave, another thing is we were trying to get through the development section. You can see with the Murfreesboro City Schools boundary, which is that light gray donut hole in our district, right? The darker gray is the areas that have been newly annexed. And so that's a lot, right? So this gets into some of the challenges of, hey, if you have elementary challenges, which we do, and you see these city limits expanding, and we know some of the plans that Murfreesboro City Schools is doing, how does that correlate so that we don't overbuild or build something in the wrong location? That's kind of volume 2 and volume 3 when we get into that. But some of these visuals start to get at that. So then the other thing that we started to look at was birth rate information. This is really an important factor in knowing in 5 years the potential for future kindergartners. It's not all inclusive, right? Because people move into this community that 5 years ago didn't live here and had babies somewhere else. But this at least starts to give us an understanding that as we baseline some of our data with census data and live birth data, what can we potentially see for kindergartners that would be served by Rutherford County Schools. As you look across these columns, the last 2 columns, we try to give you a range based on the previous year's market type kindergartners that we've gotten as we've benchmarked that from 5 years earlier with live births. Now, live births is a little bit wonky as well, because if you have more live births in November and December, 5 years later, they're not going to be in your system, right? So again, there's some things that happen. What we really wanted to highlight here in our analysis, did we see something different as we went through the start of COVID? So as we look at 2019, 2020, we see there's a slight drop in live births in the county. So again, that was something where, how is data going to lead us to, did we see or will we see more kindergartners in future years? More than just saying, hey, people chose not to come, and so maybe they come back as first grade. Come back to that because there is some answers in the data. Page 16 looks at your current data sets and understanding from 18-19 through the 22-23 school year. So 2 tables. Top table is just the raw number of students by grade from preschool all the way through 12th grade. The bottom table gets at the cohort change as the students advance year to year. So one of the things that we always focus on is the senior class. So when we look at our senior class, how does that relate to the incoming kindergarten class? That's typically how we look at this, right? But we have a donut hole with students that can go to Murfreesboro City Schools, right? I was trying to figure out how to not say their name all the time, right?
We live it every day. It's fine. And we're collaborative. You're fine to mention them.
All right. So as we look at the senior class, what we really were focusing on is the 7th grade, right? But we also know that there are families that make a choice that are in the city schools to come to your system sooner in 6th grade rather than waiting till 7th grade, right? So you can start in that middle school experience. And when you look at that bottom table, that starts to help illustrate what we're seeing for some of those bumps from 5th to 6th and 6th to 7th. So again, you can look at this, and we can spend a lot of time just looking at this, but I wanted to give you those quick little nuggets on that. Another thing that we look at is migration. So what has happened over time at each of these 3 levels? So the right-hand side, if you're pro-growth, you like those numbers because it's positive and there's a lot of them. If you don't have space in your schools, You wish they weren't as high as they are, right? The green side is those are students that left the district from the previous year, and we're showing you 4 years at each of these levels. So again, trying to get a sense of there's a lot of movement of kids. If we just turned everything off, built no more homes, we would just still continue to see more families coming into our system. So that's the point of this visual.
You'll leave that one. I think what is neat that I kind of looked at, and I don't know if neat's the right word, but you can see the outward migration during the COVID year that was interrupted with distance learning of 2021, and then how those students returned during the 21-22 school year. And so that was just a different trend that you don't necessarily see in middle and high school.
For sure. And you can't bank that it's going to continue at that levels, right? So that's part of the reason for looking at some of this data. So again, you'll see a lot of different maps that we provide to get a sense of where we're seeing the growth. So on this one, benchmarking back from 18-19 to 22-23, orange areas are where we've seen an increase, green areas a decrease, not very many decrease areas. The darker the orange, the greater the increase. So again, down to those planning areas, I'm trying to target what's happening. A map that looks a little bit washed out because of the extent size of your county is this heat map. And so this gets at the clustering of where we see students, and this is the 22-23 data. So as we're up near Smyrna, all of that area through there, that's where we have the greatest clustering of students that are receiving services in your district. And I probably should mention, again, we have more students even beyond the city schools that are going to private, parochial, homeschool, right? So these are just students receiving services on all of the stuff that we're showing you. So again, lots of things changing with your enrollments. That's just kind of to bring you up to the speed of how we've looked at your data sets, and maybe a little bit differently than how you've heard it before. So as we move into developments, this is where myself and Jenna Wallace, we spent about a week down here just trying to drive and take all of the data sets that we received. How does that make sense, and how fast are things happening? Any of you who have followed stuff through the planning process, when you go in for your preliminary plat, your final plat, and all the different inspections, you know it takes a certain amount of time to get through that process. So we wanted to make sure that what we were seeing as it went through those processes, to have kind of that eyes on what's occurring. And so we drove most of these streets. Some I wish we had not driven when school was letting out, but we were there. It was all part of the experience. So this first visual on page 22 is to help you understand, is there some sort of correlation with census population, which is the green line? So 9,000 and more persons every year coming into your county, right? Blue line represents the certificate of occupancies. So I think there's a little bit of a delay. I'm pretty sure there's a delay in the number that we have now when they get recorded. I'm pretty sure from when we track things back to the building permit, which is different than the certificate of occupancy, right? Building permit, start building, CO, you can move in. When we look at that, you're easily going to be in the 4,000 plus range. So don't look at that dip like, oh, what's going on? It's a delay in the data sets that we get access to. Red line represents the enrollment change from year to year. So the 2021 school year, that was our dip, right? COVID, and then we've come back raging strong. Another way that we look at this information down to those planning areas is how many students are we yielding in each of these planning areas? On these visuals on the next few pages, we're showing you it either as single-family developments or multifamily developments, and we've broken it out for K-5 elementary students in each of these attendance zones. The bottom row will give you that district average for your entire district. As you look above in each of those attendance areas, when it's orange, it means it's greater than 3 from that district average. If it's green, it's less than 3, right? So it makes sense. Our donut hole should be green, right? We would think that more of our students are not in that particular area. So some things that start to stand out, you can quickly see which of the attendance zones are we yielding more kids, K-5 kids, in single-family units. So quite impressive for elementary to be Let me explain that bottom row and how that relates to all of the rows. For every 100 single-family units, we're generating 16 K through 5 students. So as we apply that out, we have other aggregates where you can see, like on the bottom, all K-12, we're generating from 38 to 42 students for every 100 single-family units.
Do you mind repeating what you just said?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I look at that bottom row of that first table, when I see the 16, we are district average-wise receiving 16 K-5 students for every 100 single-family units that are built. And it would be higher if it was the entire Rutherford County. We show the same thing at the secondary for single-family. So again, you'll be able to look at all this stuff in the future. Then we also do it for multifamily. Really, the point here is we're less than 50% yielding of students out of multifamily developments. And the way that we talk about multifamily, we've aggregated together mobile homes, townhomes, duplexes, apartments. So everything that's not single family. If we isolate it for those smaller segments, you'd see some of them even smaller. And it all gets back to number of bedrooms in the apartments, amenities, all those type of things start to play into what we see, particularly with multifamily developments. The scary thing about multifamily, we may be yielding fewer students, but when a multifamily development goes in, we have more units concentrated in a tighter area, right? So depending on the size of that complex, you can generate a lot of kids if there's a lot of units there. Again, we show you that at the multifamily, at the secondary level. We also looked at the age of your inventory and broke it out into these 6 classifications. What's interesting is, again, because we're so zoomed out, it looks like doesn't look like there's that much red up there. But as you zoom in, there's a lot of pockets of red. So don't let the map extents make it look like, wow, it's all before 1990. Well, the areas that are dominated by blue, pretty rural, right? But again, looking at what the average year built was, and then also looking at the values of homes. This is the assessed value, not what you maybe can sell it for today. It might, and hopefully is more than what you would have it assessed for. But again, you see these categories. We're trying to get at what is potentially affordable, and I say words like affordable depends on the lens you're looking through, right? If you can only afford a $250,000 house, means something different than an area that is building a $400,000 house, right? But again, just what the median home values are. From that information, we then created a map of dots where's all of the construction activity been happening, and when we're having 4,000 units built every year, it's just a cluster of dots. This is really just to illustrate where we're seeing those clusters. I love the inset on the top right where it's just dots, right? Another way of looking at this development that I think is important is this visual here with these bars. If we look at the 1980-89, so it's almost right in the middle of this visual, and we look at that bottom row where it says existing units, 22,951, when we go to the top row and all the other columns as we move to the right, look, we've been building more units than we actually had at the start of 1980 in each decade. So when you look at this visual, the red part of the bar illustrates what was built at the time the decade began. The blue part is what was built during that decade. So we've had explosive growth for decade, right? And that's kind of why we're experiencing the challenges we have, right? Again, from all the information that we received from the county, the cities, driving through the community, trying to see where all of this stuff is actually happening, we created this map that shows where we're seeing the existing developments, which would be the green color. Those that may happen within the next 5 years are yellow, and then those that would be further out towards 10 years are purple. All disclaimer on this map, once we create a map like this, there's probably two stories that you get from this. One is you may know someone where I've colored it a color, and they told you that they would never develop. Well, I'm not telling you, or they would say they were never going to develop unless they died. I'm not predicting they die. I'm just saying, hey, they're close to infrastructure. Things may happen. They may have their price. So that's the first thing that sometimes comes from this map. The second thing is, and we're kind of experiencing some of this right now, is there has to be economic opportunity, viability for development to occur. And so we've seen some things where it's slowed a little bit just from some of the metric data sets that we're looking at, because as interest rates have come up, people are kind of a little more cautionary, right? We're used to 3%, and now as we've been moving towards 10%, there's a little bit of caution, right? Tomorrow they may raise the rates, maybe not as much as what I've heard tonight before I came in here. But those type of things start to impact how fast we can see some of the building activity. So we're not the knowing eye, but we're trying to look at these data sets in your community to say, hey, there might be a little bit of a slowdown, but then because of all the other things that are happening economically here, it should still continue to run and run at a very fast pace. This visual on page 32 is really just another way of looking at this from your high school attendance areas of where we're seeing some of these developments. In the appendix, you see a lot of other things where we've zoomed into some specific areas. But as you look at this graphic, for each of the high school attendance areas, for the developments that we know that are happening in the classification of current, 5-year, and 10-year, we've listed off the number of potential units that could be in there that fit those classifications. So right now we have about 13,000 units that you could say are like shovel ready. So if you go back to if we're creating 4,000 units a year in a perfect world, if we have 13,000, we have 3 years supply of available lots. It's quite impressive. And then as we get to the 5-year, and then of course the 10-year. The key thing is each time we do this type of analysis, we're always updating what is that development, what impact does it mean for kids that we will receive. All right, you can read all of these different observations. That's kind of that 100,000-foot view that I gave you with the visuals that you've been given. So what does this mean for projections? All right, this first visual, top side, is just a nice little color graphic to show you where we've been over the last 5 years. And then there's this black line that comes down in the middle, and then where we're forecasting the enrollment to go over the next 5 years. And so as we look at this information, you can see the elementary, we're at about 18,000 students, and we have them growing over 20,000 by 27, 28. We look at the middle school students, about 12,800, and growing to about 14,500 in 27, 28. And then when we look at the high school, I think that's about 18,000, a little over 18,000 right now, and growing to over 20,000 in 27, 28. So our enrollment district-wide at about 49,600 and growing to 55,300 students. This is, as we look at all of these variables, there could be things, because we literally took all of your county, took all of this data, put it into the way we analyze it. It's a lot. And there's some things that when you go back to the development, some things are going to happen faster, some things are going to be slower, and so the differences are going to start to factor out as we look at specific buildings, which we'll get into in a moment. The bottom visual that you see on here is just a number format of what you see above. If you're a table type person, you like that visual. If you're more of a graphic, the top. So generally our overview, I kind of cap that off in explaining what we're seeing on these graphs and tables. It's just a lot of growth, right? And so how do we start to plan for that? That's volume 2 and volume 3, probably more into volume 3. I'm going to explain everything you see on page 37 on some ensuing pages, because there's just a lot of information, and I imagine I'll have to explain it on other times when I come here too, because it's just an immense amount of information. So here on page 38, we've listed off each of the buildings. And when we have the capacities done, we'll have the capacity that would be in the next column. Don't have that yet. But we do have, for your past enrollments, I show that enrollment 3 ways, and for each building. So we'll start with Barfield Elementary. The middle row, blue font, reside, is based on that address, are they actually residing in that attendance area? So when we go over to 2022-23, we see there's 1,069 students that are residing there as K-5 students that are in our system. We know they're in our system. The bottom row, green font, attend, is where the student actually is attending. So there may be some things with programs or with just movements of students with multiple addresses, a mom and a dad address, but there's this what I would call school choice, where they're going to some of the different buildings. So in this case, we had 1,069 that reside there as K-5, and we have 938 that are attending there with the official count data that we received. The movement between there is the top row, purple font, reside / attend. So do they actually reside and attend that zone? And so we have 898 of the 1,069 reside and are attending that zone. So we made up from 899 to 938 from students from one of the other zones. So that's an explanation there. I want to pause because let's see if you guys understand that, because that's a lot.
And something, board members, just to kind of remember Barfield zone, we rezoned Barfield in the 2021 school year when we opened Plainview, and then during the 1920 school year, Salem Elementary opened, which was Murfreesboro City School. So those are things that aren't going to necessarily, but when you see some fluctuations, especially for some of our elementary schools, we rezoned a couple of those.
Perfect. So this gets at every single building, and this is what I'm saying, when we get the capacities in here, it really starts to mean a little bit more. Another thing that I want to explain is, so La Verge Primary, we have this in here because back in 1920 with the original data, it still was operating as a building. So when we look at that midway, that's why that's showing there. I also want to talk through some of the buildings that are like school of choice. So when we look at McFadden School of Excellence, if you notice we have either 0 or 1 students that reside there. That could be a student that was, let's say, in the city schools boundary, and they're here. It could be an employee that came here, but they don't live in the district, right? And so we have that based on how we captured the student data. But then we know that it's a zone that takes in the entire district. And so what we've tried to capture on the attend number is we know that there's going to be kids coming from all of these other zones to fill them up with the number of students they have. This is how we've tried to model for that for each of those buildings at each of the levels that meet this.
Can I ask about the Murfreesboro City Schools area? So are those kids that are living in a county zone right now and are going to the city schools, or vice versa?
It's more they live in the city zones and they're coming to us here. Good question.
Just for clarification, so there's more city schools students coming to Rutherford County schools versus them going to the city school?
No. It'd be 100% opposite of that.
Opposite of that.
Yeah.
These would be students who either have an employee who live in the city schools and so they bring their kids to us, or they say that we pay county taxes and I don't want to go to a city school, so we allow them to go to their closest elementary school if they provide transportation.
Okay.
And that's, again, a way that we've tried to capture them in knowing they're there, and that set has had some increases, some decreases here of recent. We'll go to another one that I know that's coming up. So, again, Thurman Francis Art of Academy. Again, another one where, again, we know there's students coming from across the entire county that go into that system, and that's why you want to look at the attend numbers. Resides are, if you purely stayed there, attend because of those other programs. Same situation with the middle schools, and then we get into the high schools. This is when I go to the next page with the alternative schools. how we try to allocate that there's some students that are going to go there, and we've looked at which of those buildings are they coming from to create that subset. And again, that's very variable. You could see a year where it might drop down to 50 students, right? Because it's based on some of the need of what's happening in those buildings. So again, a lot of students that will be coming here. This gets me into the next steps. What I want to focus on for you to understand how to use this tool. So it's more than just coming to it, looking at the enrollment, seeing where we think it will go, even specifically to the buildings. There's some things that may happen that we have had to make some assumptions on, right? So what happens with live bursts? And so we've left you a tool that as you look at those live bursts, if we see a spike in live bursts as that data is released, that may start to point us towards our enrollments may be casting towards the low side district-wide. The same thing with housing. As housing product is built or slowed down as they try to meet some of these different demands, if it increases beyond the typical 4,000 plus units that we've been experiencing the last 3 years, we may go even higher than what we forecasted. And I'm just focusing on that orange side where it's increases. The opposite happens if it's a downturn. Also, the same things with as we continue to see economic opportunities. If they go at a even faster rate than what we've been looking at, we could see more kids. Same thing with demographic shifts. And then the other component to this is how many of the students, how quickly do they come into our system from the city schools? Do they come in more at 6th grade or 7th grade? And I know the conversations we've had with them, it's all based on really kind of the family. Do they want to start that middle school experience right at the beginning or finish out the elementary with the kids that are there? So some of that is really at a household level. With that, let me open. If there's questions that I generally can answer tonight, I will. You know, when you go into the appendix, there's even more information that breaks things out in a lot of other ways and details, but questions, comments that you all have?
No, one that pointed out just that seemed like a misnomer that I may just see if you could look at for us. Looking at Rockville High School, the projected number of students that attend actually decreases, and that's one of our biggest areas of growth. So if you could just give us some semblance of that in the future, that would be helpful.
Perfect.
We would love for that to happen, but
I have a question on the, and I could be wrong, but on the key considerations number 2, when I'm looking at the enrollment by grade, the 7th grade classes are larger than the senior classes. So did that just get typed up backwards, or am I misunderstanding something?
Now, let me go back. That's the page. So normally we look at the kindergarten class, but because of what we're seeing here, so when we look at our 7th grade class, I think they tend to be a little bit larger than the senior class. So I probably need to change that note saying that it is larger in 7th grade, which positions the district that you're going to have more high schoolers in the future.
That's what I
For
thought. I
sure.
just wanted to make
Yeah.
sure I wasn't missing something.
No, you're right. That's a good catch.
no, and our graduation rate sits somewhere between 94 to 96%, usually right above 95, and then you've got some early graduates, and we do lose more students to private school once they get into high school as well.
I'll speak for myself. This is a great report. I know a lot of the other board members have really appreciated this and the in-depth detail that you've gone to. Some of this we already know, but it's great to see it black ink and white paper. And we have something tangible now to work from. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Are we able to call you one-on-one if we go through this and we have questions and we want more clarity? Are you available to us to contact, or is there something within the contract that we have to abide by?
Yeah, I say funnel everything through Dr. Sullivan, and if we have to do something where, let's say I can't get here, we could do a Zoom, we could have other work sessions, for sure.
'Cause I know I'm gonna have more questions, because right now I'm just absorbing it, and so I want to know if we can use you as a resource.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I know you'll be here, your team will be here for some of the building tours as well the next couple of months, so we can try to see what some of those dates are and try to tag team maybe and add a working group.
That'd be great if we can tag team and have more deeper dives if we can, because honestly, it's too much. There's a lot that was said to us right now, and you explained quite a bit. I've written quite a few notes myself. I know I'm going to go back and have more questions, so.
It usually takes 3 times for all the stuff,
Yeah.
at least 3 times.
So if you'll just, we'll give Dr. Sullivan your schedule, and we'll work within that realm. So
Yeah, that'll be
we're not
Yeah,
bombarding
sure.
you, but we can have access to you. That'd be great.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Rob, it's great.
All right,
Thank you so much.
You guys have a Merry Christmas.
You too. Ready?
Yeah.
All right, next we have the salary study. This is an additional scope of work with Evergreen Solutions, so let me give you a little bit of background. They are going to present on Thursday in a very similar manner that we had tonight, except it'll be Zoom. So they'll be presenting just because they're in Florida, so it's less cost to bring them back. They can do it via Zoom. So a couple things that kind of came to head, and I'll let her explain this more on Thursday, but they're definitely with the archaic systems that we use in our district. There were some issues with getting data sets in a manageable format. You guys know as board members that we use for a payroll system, a DOS system, was a challenge in exporting all that. Our team did an amazing job getting them what they could, but in that type of system, it doesn't have all the identifiable information we need. So it's taken some extra time to kind of look at that. In meeting with her, I also knew that one of the things that the board kind of is looking at is how can we work smarter about what we are doing and kind of looking at all things of our organization. So we met, and there's a couple things, and I'll read this to you, of what extra tasks they're going to recommend. So Rutherford County Schools senior leadership team is requesting additional information to adequately address staffing, salary, and the business model for Rutherford County Schools. The scope of work will include the following. 1, administer the job assessment tool to all classified hourly, salaried, and certified staff, excluding excluders, and I'll talk about that in a second, estimated to be 2,100 employees. What that is as soon as we get back from Christmas break, if this is approved, then we will send every one of our classified staff members a job employment or job, I can't remember what the A stands for, tool, and they rank or they give us feedback, what is your job title, what should your job title actually be, and then what duties do you do that don't align or are not communicated in your job title. And then they go through and rank all of the different areas that they would have as far as how much influence do you have in decision making, how much influence do you have on behavior, all those different types of things to hear the voice of our classified staff. So they'll take that information, go with a couple weeks, and then get into number 2, analyze the JAT data and develop a hierarchy of classifications, identifying any position that needs to be evaluated in adjustment to a pay grade assignment or whose job description does not reflect the employee's current role. Perfect example would be our educational EAs and our special education EAs. Those are 2 different jobs, somebody who is serving in a first grade classroom who is in a general education setting versus somebody who is in a structured setting dealing with some very severe needs of a student. And so that'll be where this comes to give us an extra classification. 3 is review all classification findings with the Rutherford project team, edit as needed to ensure the hierarchy reflects operational instructional needs, collect staffing level data from up to 10 peer districts to determine comparable level of staffing across all central office departments and supports positions, develop a solution file with recommendations to all pay grades, alignment of all classification, and assignment to the appropriate pay plan and grade. Also develop pay plans that provide the district with a mechanism to manage all their employees on their appropriate pay plan. 6, travel for 2 staff members to get to the district to review classifications and staffing data with the district staff, return travel to present final project presentation if requested, and we will request that. Train the HR staff on the management of plans, and then the last step is job description updates can be completed as an add-on, and that'll be our recommendation as well. Otherwise, raw data will be provided for the district to update job descriptions internally. The anticipated completion date is 2/4/23. That is about 2 weeks before our budget retreat, about 2.5 weeks before our budget retreat, so we would have all of their recommendations and different proposals. They will go through with a fiscal impact of all their different proposals so that we can choose to kind of see what we are looking at. And then job descriptions, because that's not necessarily budget pending, that's just to update files for us, would be completed 45 days after. So you will see all of the scope of work on the next page. Would be for a cost of $48,000. We can use ESSER 3.0 funds out of recruit and retain to pay for that. And in talking, so I mentioned our senior level leadership team. We meet every Friday. That's myself, our 4 assistant superintendents. We have Monica, Patty, Mark, we have Annie, and I think that's pretty much our team that we meet every Friday and kind of discuss where we are as a district and what we need to do. And this, in looking at what our staff does, $48,000 would be a great investment to put this on somebody else to help us from running the day, keep us from the day-to-day management of the district too. So happy to answer any questions on that. She will talk much more about that on, Stacy, I believe, is going to Zoom in with us on Thursday. I'll tell you a couple quick things that they're going to bring up, because I know classified staff always is on the forefront of an area we need to address. One is breaking apart the classes, and so instead of having 0 to 2 or 3 to 6, having a step increase every single year. The other portion of that would be breaking out to probably 0 to 24, and that would hopefully be able to do the same thing with certified staff, which would match us with other surrounding counties that we sometimes lose because we top out at 21 and we lose some of our staff to go to a different county because they're trying to get their highest 5. So those are going to be a couple just quick hitters that they point on.
I just want to say thank you. Ever since I've been on the board, it's not just because I used to be an EA and work with these people, but these job descriptions were outdated. They did so much more than what was in the job description, and the pay needs to equal what we've been asking from these people all along. I just want to say thank you. I know it's been time consuming, but I thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you for the board for doing it, because if we didn't have funding for doing it, we wouldn't be doing it. So,
Mr. Young?
Yeah, I appreciate everything that you guys have done here. But are we also looking at analyzing not just surrounding counties, but also out of state?
yes, they're looking at similar, where we ran into with our salary study is we're, I think, 93rd or 94th biggest district in the entire country. There were a lot of those districts that we were not similar to, and so we have had to expand out past enrollment and more demographically similar. What surprised me was when they were talking with them, I believe, again, they're from Tallahassee, and we are bigger than Tallahassee's school system, and that's Florida state capital. So you wouldn't expect us to be bigger than that school district, but we are. So yes, they're looking at comparable states from an economic standpoint as well.
Good, because I know there's very few counties that compare to
Correct.
our size.
Correct.
Anyone else? Any further questions? The chair recognizes Representative Sparks. Thank you for joining us tonight. Condolences to you of your mother. Thank you so much. Next.
Next, we have Insurance Tab 3. So this is a resolution to ensure the classified retirees will receive the same discounted health premiums as the certified staff for 2023, depending on the years of service at retirement. So you have a resolution that is 2 pages, and it is multiple different groups is the best way I know how to say it. Did I skip one?
Yes, skip number 10.
Oh, I was so excited about retiree insurance. All right, let's go back to special education physical therapist job description. All right, so number 10, the position is to provide physical therapy services which will enable eligible students with disabilities to benefit from their special education program. Essential job duties and qualifications are listed in the job description that's attached. This job description will give us the ability to move from a private contractor to a Rutherford County Schools employee. Funding will be paid through IDEA Part B funds. Dr. Ralston, anything you want to add to that about why it's needed?
Don't skip me.
I'm sorry.
It's needed. We've been in a contract with a private company since the early 1990s, and it would be nice to have our own employees doing physical therapy with our students. So in approving this job description, you give me the opportunity to interview and look for our own physical therapists. Is this taking the place of the special? Because I know that I was we had a bunch of No, ma'am, it does not. It takes the place of a different contract.
Any comments or questions? Okay, now we'll go to insurance.
Now we'll go to insurance, tab 3 that I was so excited to talk about. So you have a 2-page document that is Rutherford County Retirement Medical Plan eligibility and benefit information effective 1/1/23. And so there's a different group based on when somebody started, how many years they had, going all the way back to 1/1/96 and before. And so our insurance team, Ms. Bratton, I believe you were involved in some of this as well with Dr. Anthony and our insurance staff. So Suzette, thank you guys again. I don't tell you enough for all your work that you did on this. Anything you want to add to this or point out?
Our certified people are receiving. So that's basically what this talks about.
Oh, sorry. That's what the resolution was for, the one page. So that's for any employee over the age of 65. They will go on the Tennessee plan. The way it's currently set up, only certified employees get the discount for that. But what we're asking is to also give a discount to the classified as well, so that we can, make sure they have the same thing, okay?
It's just another kind of perk that we're looking at as we look at trying to retain our employees.
Right. Now, there is one note that y'all may notice in there. It's talking about bus drivers, and I just found out that the bus drivers are not actual employees. They're contracted out. So the state had given me this verbiage, so I'm going to get back with them because we don't want to mislead that, okay? So that's what the resolution is for. And then the other pages that you have, the 2-page, that just breaks it out. When an employee retires, are they going to be eligible to be subsidized for any of their premiums? The state does say that they can retire after 10 years of service. That's to be eligible for the health benefits. But what this guide is going to give us is when are we going to pay part of their premiums for them? So somebody can retire at 10 years, but that doesn't mean we're going to pay some of their premiums for them. So that's what all of this outlined for y'all.
So great work on this, because this has been a whole bunch of Excel documents that had different groups connected to different cells and on 2 pages. So thank you.
Thank you. Any comments? Amendments? Okay, number 12.
All right, so number 12, and if you would have looked at the agenda that was sent to you Friday, this is why it's so important for us to be able to have that option to make changes if needed. 12 and the original 13 were exactly the same, except one paid for out of ESSER 2.0 and one paid for out of ESSER 3.0, and it was the exact same motion, same language, just with the one number difference for how it was paying. So we've combined it into one. Is that correct, Brian? Or are we actually going to pay it all out of ESSER 2.0? Are we going to be able to pay for it all out of ESSER 2? Perfect. So number 12 is a classified hourly bonuses through ESSER 2.0 funds. So this is authorization of $600 of non-recurring additional pay for extra duties brought about by staffing issues due to the COVID-19 pandemic to be funded with ESSER 2.0 funds. The effect of the COVID-19 pandemic has brought about additional daily duties to our classified hourly Rutherford County Schools employees. To help compensate for these additional duties, Director of Schools requests approval of a non-recurring additional pay program that will provide all Rutherford County Schools classified hourly, full, and part-time employees a bonus of $600, $300 for part-time. The payment's contingent on all the following stipulations being met by the school employee. Funding for this one-time bonus initiative with an estimated cost of $1.2 million is to be fully funded with ESSER 2.0 grant funds, and this program is contingent on the approval of the requested ESSER 2.0 grant application as filed with the State of Tennessee Department of Education. So just the criteria, this matches just with different dates, exactly what we did last year. So criteria for first bonus, the employee cannot have a break in employment with Rutherford County Schools between October 1st, 2022 and January 27th, 2023 in order to receive payment for the first semester. The employer remains on active employee status during this time period, available for and reporting for duty as assigned by RCS. in Rutherford County Schools, hourly classified employees satisfying these requirements will receive a $300 bonus, $150 for part-time on January 27, 2023, less applicable payroll deductions. We talked about doing it monthly, but again, that was going to tax our employees more. So that's why we only did it twice. Then for the second bonus, the employee cannot have a break in employment with Rutherford County Schools between February 1st, 2023 and May 26, 2023 in order to receive payment for second semester. The employee remains on active employee status during this time period, available for and reporting for duties assigned by RCS. In Rutherford County Schools, hourly classified employees satisfying these requirements will receive a $300 bonus, $150 for part-time in June of 2023, less applicable payroll deductions. See why I didn't want to read all that twice.
Any comments or questions?
I think this is a great use of funds. I mean, especially for if we're using ESSER funds, a one-time cost versus a reoccurring cost. And maybe this will keep us from losing more. How many positions are we down?
I can give you a report on Thursday.
It was 50 last time, I think it was 50.
That was for janitorial was 55 or 56, and this is all classified, so it is in the hundreds, I'm sure. But we are managing and making it, and that tide has slowed down from what we were losing originally, but it is still, this is kind of that stopgap between when we can adjust our salary schedules and job descriptions to get us into next year.
So when we get the salary study in February and we get to budget, we'll be right on time to upgrade the salaries at that point.
For next school year.
2024.
Yeah, 2023, 2024,
Right,
correct.
2023,
Yep,
2024.
correct.
And this is in addition to the $1,000 that special ed EAs will be receiving at the end of this year, am I correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Number
You know,
13?
that was a good one, because that has kind of been left out there because it was end of the year, but all special education EAs get an extra $1,000 at the end of the year as part of their, yep. Yep, it'll still be there.
Great.
Yep,
So that's going to come at their last paycheck?
yes.
In December?
May, no,
Oh,
at
in
the end of
May,
the school year.
next year?
Yep, school year.
At the end of, I was thinking in December, I was thinking.
Be a great
They're
one,
going to have a good Christmas.
Yep.
Well, that's wonderful.
Okay, so next we have 13, Jane Ross Tutoring. That's a strange name, let me kind of read, that's who we're using. It's ACT Boot Camp. And so this is something we are doing district-wide to help as a district ACT scores. So Jane Ross Tutoring will provide one day of 2 3-hour professional development sessions on February 11th, 2023 for Rutherford County teachers. The professional development will be conducted with one session for math and science, and a separate session will be conducted for English and social studies. Payment for this training will be provided with ESSER 3.0 funds allocated for high schools and will not exceed $32,000 for the teacher training, materials, district license, and all travel-related expenses, and the proposal is attached. Payment will be payable upon receipt of an invoice after the training. In addition, 60 teachers across the district will train over 1,300 junior students from February 25th through March 6, 2023 to prepare students for the upcoming March 7th ACT test. This ACT boot camp opportunity will provide to students free of charge, a $525 savings per student if they were to attend this boot camp independently on their own. These 60 teachers will receive a payment of $50 an hour for the 27 hours of teaching ACT strategies through ESSER 3.0 and will not exceed $96,000. Dr. Martin deserves a lot of shout out for this. She had this plan ready to go last year and it just never made it to you, and I will leave it at that. But I appreciate Dr. Martin's work on this because this could definitely be a benefit to our students.
Is this going to be an ongoing training for?
It will be as long as it shows improvement. We want to make sure that if we're investing in this, that it has improvement and it makes, basically it's a huge boot camp right before our students take the ACT. Dr. Chastain, anything you want to add to that?
I was just going to say that once we get a group of teachers trained, we won't have to replicate that training every year, so it should be a lot more cost-effective as we move forward. But yeah, we're excited to get it started, and like Dr. Sullivan said, Kay has done an excellent job on this.
It works with my boys, and that was years ago. I just, I've gone there, what do you call it, something besides boot camp?
Yep.
Can I just ask for clarification? Will this be available to only 60 teachers, or is the 60 teachers part a separate piece from the top paragraph?
You want to hit on that?
I believe, I would have to go back and look specifically at that proposal, but we're going to get teachers from each school, so there'll be kind of an application process for them to get that specific training in each of those subject areas, and then with the expectation that they will reproduce that training. And you'll notice that that February 11th is on a Saturday, so a lot of these will be weekend activities, so we probably will have to limit it at those teachers for the first year.
And will it have a cap on how many students can?
We're hoping, no. There's like 3 tiers, so we truly have looked at all the possibilities. For as many want this opportunity, we will make it happen.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Number 14?
All right, number 14, curriculum and instruction. So pursuant to board policy, the approval of potential charter review committee members. So it says potential because we have received 1 letter of intent for American Classical. And when we are looking at that, they have until February, is it 1st, Dr. Chastain? Do they have till February 1st to submit the actual application? Is that correct? Whatever, if it falls on a weekend, may be a little bit different, but roughly around that time frame. And so this is a potential charter review committee until we receive the official application. You'll see the 2023 charter application review proposed committee. I believe that our chair, Ms. Sharp, asked Mr. Tidwell to serve on this. So is that correct still? Yes.
Ms. Bratton said she'd have enough fun.
So, Caleb Tidwell, School Board Vice Chair, Zone 3. Caitlin Bullard, School Choice Charter Coordinator in Central Office. Elizabeth Davis, Learning Loss Coordinator. Devola Mormon, Special Education Supervisor. Courtney Brown, Special Education Supervisor, Gifted. Alexandria Jackson, Principal Roy Waldron. Bree Cole is a community member. Cedric Dukes, community member. Kyle Nix, Principal at Christiana Middle School. Brian Lewis, CTE Specialist. Grayson Maxwell, Communications Specialist. Sherry McCrary, Instructional Technology Specialist. Jonna Perazio, ESL Instructional Technology Facilitator, and Kay Martin, Secondary Education Coordinator. And you'll see below that note, Rutherford County Board of Education Policy 1.901 states review teams shall be comprised of members of the administrative staff of the district, community members, and a member of the board with relevant educational, organizational, financial, and legal experience. Want to add anything to it? I believe our 2 community members came from Leadership Rutherford.
Yeah, Dr. Bullard reached out after a Leadership Rutherford experience, and a lot of community members wanted to help our district in lots of different ways. So that is where we got these community members. One of the issues we've had in the past is keeping community members engaged in the process because it can be a little tedious. So I'm excited about having members that have specifically reached out wanting to be part of that. Mr. Tidwell's excited.
It's going to be great.
Yeah, I think Leadership Rutherford is great. I've spoken before them through Carpe Artistra, and it's a very active group, and it's a very diverse group, so I'm excited about this. Any questions, anybody? Okay, number 15.
Number 15 is legal tab 5, so you have an add a county transfer student 1. So the board's been requested to admit a transfer student from another school system under discipline. The student was expelled for making a threat to the school involving a weapon. According to policy 6.318, the board may deny admission of any student except those in state custody when a student transfers from another school system while under suspension or expulsion. Director of Schools recommendations deny admission, and if you have any questions, you can talk to Ms. Ridley. We've emailed the information that we've been able to get access to.
Okay, policy change. Are you going to read? You want to read them Thursday night?
I can read them Thursday night. So on the policy changes, if you want to just see those policy changes, and just for board members, you're aware, if on the actual board agenda, and we'll have these Thursday when I read them as well. These were there last time, and I just didn't know where they were, so that's my fault. Anytime we have board changes, we have the highlights changed, and then the strike-through is available for you to see. It's part of your board agenda in the tabs. And so as I'm reading the board policies that you'll see, the recommended ones, these are again are their second reading. The only change that I would request is on going back to the water access. That seems to be a popular one. Policy 3.501, water access. If you can go on down to that one. It is a very minor change, but has impact. Probably the very last one, I would say, because it's a new policy. Oop, keep going. That's it. If you will look at line 30, so you'll see it's highlighted. So we have building in or near food service area and in or near the gymnasium. We are adding the word after building and. So that puts 3. So you have one, a minimum of a water bottle filling station on each floor and wing of each school building, and in or near the food service area, and in or near the gymnasium. Because it looked like the way it was written, it could be interpreted that it was just saying we have one on each floor, and then the service area or the gym. So we want one in the gym or the service area. That sound good, Monica?
Yes, perfect, thank you.
Mr. Lee, you want to comment on, because we actually have more than what the policy says, correct?
Yes,
Yes.
we've reviewed it, looked at it. We've been adding water bottle filling stations every year. I probably spend $150,000 the last 3 or 4 years. And we'll continue to do that. Most of our schools have at least 3. We have some with more. Some schools have actually bought some on their own, and we've partnered with them, and we pay the installation if they get them. So there are schools that have 8, 9, or 10, but those schools have bought more on their own. But we are continuing to add. Our goal in the next 2 years is to have every school that there's not a water fountain in the facility that doesn't have a water bottle filling station on it.
Thank you, Mr. Lee.
I would just like to add, to recognize Miss Mazetta Jackson, sorry, I messed that up tonight, and her colleagues for kind of helping work with the American Heart Association to bring forth some of these policy changes. Thank you.
Number 17?
So I think we're in 16.
I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of us.
I was trying to do it too, that's okay. 16, Financial Matters, tab 6, so Fund 141, General Purpose School Budget Amendment. This amendment increased budgeted Fund 141 revenue and expenditures to recognize the additional awarded amount of fiscal year 22-23 voluntary pre-K grant. This reflects the additional amount of $88,983 to the grant award that was approved by the State Department of Education. This additional grant reward will support opening a 22nd voluntary pre-K classroom in Rutherford County Schools. The classroom location would be Plainview Elementary, where we currently have a full class of 20 VPK students. We have an additional 40 incoming qualifying 4-year-old students on waiting list for Plainview School and Christian Elementary School that will help to fill the seats in an additional Plainview Elementary VPK classroom. So that's just the funding of where you were approving the position last time. This is the money that goes with it.
And this is a great program. We had a wait list there for a while.
Oh, we still do.
We still do, okay.
Yes.
Any questions? Now we'll do 17.
All right, 17, Facilities and Construction, tab 7, Laverne Middle School addition and renovation credit change order. Robert S. Biscayne and Company has submitted a credit change order in the amount of $240,015.85 for remaining contingency funds not used during construction of the Laverne Middle School addition and renovation project. This would change the contract amount for the construction of Laverne Middle School addition from $13,273,640 to $13,033,624.15. Engineering Construction has reviewed the request and agrees with the credit. Anything you want to add to that, Trey? Would that close that one out completely?
Yes, sir.
Everybody's wanting to know what you're going to use that money for.
That'll be up to the board to decide. You can move it all around.
Do you have a recommendation? I'm sorry, did you have a
Sorry, I
recommendation?
didn't hear the question.
Did you have a recommendation for that change order? What
What to do with the money left over?
to do with that?
We don't have, it stays in the building program, and it'll go to a future middle school project.
Yeah, because if we put it to elementary, we'd have to go back and split it.
Okay, yeah, we don't want to split it.
Now, there's a small portion that is split because of the 6th grade, but the rest of it is not, so we do not. We want to keep it in the middle school classification.
Thank you for clarifying.
Thank you.
Our number 2, Browns Chapel Elementary, Principal Kelly Goostree submitted a request for an Eagle Scout project for Browns Chapel. Engineering and Construction has reviewed the request and approves. The approximate cost for the ball court is $3,000 and will be funded by donations coordinated by the Scouts. This project will be at no cost to the board. Is it Gaga Ball?
It's not, it's a handball type,
The Gaga Ball
Or-
Pit? Is that what it is? Is it Gaga Ball Pit? Is that
maybe, but it's a Eagle Scout project. We work with them a lot.
If you haven't Googled Gaga Ball Pit, you need to go Google Gaga Ball Pit because it
I'm gonna
took
have
over last year, and my son, even when he broke his arm last year, was in the Gaga Ball Pit, and they had to call me and tell me he had to get out of the Gaga Ball Pit because it didn't matter. So, yeah.
I'll have to do that. Number 3.
Rocky Fork Middle Fire Alarm. Maintenance is requesting to replace the fire alarm system at Rocky Fork Middle School. The fire alarm panel has been damaged beyond repair by a voltage surge believed to be caused by a lightning strike. Rocky Fork Middle's existing system is an Edwards, and we would prefer to change to the Firelight Silent Night system utilized in our other schools. Budget for this request is $150,000 for Fund 177 ending fund balance as an emergency request. Just so that you're aware, we are still in compliance, so when we have a panel that goes out, we have to do a fire, is it a fire walk or fire watch? What's it called?
It's a fire watch. It's a process that the school has to do each day and overseen by our maintenance staff.
So they do a walk nonstop, basically, to make sure that everything is in operating order. And in opening Rocky Fork Middle School, I could not be more thankful that that fire alarm panel is going to be removed if approved, because it was not like the rest of them, and it was a pain. It's the best way to put it, don't you think, Trey?
That's very diplomatic.
So is this an upgrade to the current system as well?
The answer is yes. It's a comparable system, but with the Firelight Silent Night, we're able to work on it. The Edwards system, we cannot. It's a proprietary system. It got installed as a fluke. I'll say that. It was approved by the engineers, not new engineer, lack of knowledge. It's a reputable system. The problem is it is proprietary, and they don't allow anybody other than certified contractors to work on it. We can't even send our fire alarm people to get certified.
Wow.
So we pay exorbitant amounts to have someone come and work on it. This price reutilizes all of the current wiring. We would have to change out some additional devices. Right now, that system is inoperable. We're looking to spend more than you asked for, but we're going to spend about $6,000. That will allow us to monitor our sprinkler systems. We're working in conjunction with the State Fire Marshal's office. Everybody's on board with what we're doing. That will get us at least the fire alarm system monitored, so that if a fire was to happen and the sprinkler system was activated, we can get a flow alarm, which will go to the fire department if it's out of school hours, so they'll know that we do have an issue. During the day, we can report anything with our staff with our fire watch, but this is not something we want to continue to do all through the rest of the school year. It's very time-consuming on the school staff, and the local jurisdiction with the city of Smyrna and the state is working with us very well, but they would like to see us make a permanent change.
Any questions? Number 4.
Number 4, Information Technology Department, 100-day contract position. Information Technology Department is requesting the approval of a 100-day contract for Arden Curtis to assist with technical documentation. Arden will be retiring January 31st, 2023, and has been a valuable employee overseeing our Microsoft servers, Office 365, and other related technical duties as assigned by the department administrator. Arden's been assisting to train a replacement for the previous few months. The purpose of this contract is to assist as needed and to continue this transition. The funding sources will come from existing technology positions that are not filled in ESSER funds and not to exceed $40,000. Arden is amazing and pretty much handles our information technology aspect of it, connecting with Skyward from the instructional standpoint, almost single-handedly, except for the training. Anything you want to add to Arden?
I need about 3 more.
Yep.
No, I think this is a good deal for us as a district. She's agreed to do this to help us through the transition, to continue the training, to get us to next year. Dr. Chastain and I have been discussing for a month now what we're going to propose for our next school year, and it's going to be 2 positions. One is Arden's to replace her, and then probably another position in the instructional part that those 2 will collaborate and work together on things that Arden has been doing simply due to the growth of the district going one-to-one. COVID, a lot of these things have just kind of snuck up on us. And we've been utilizing our people, one person doing 2 or 3 jobs, and it's time for us to, I don't want to use the term address it, but that's kind of where we are. We've had a lot of people throughout the district that have stepped up in large ways, and this is one of those areas where we had someone who just did their job and did well beyond their job.
Yeah, I'll tell you the best one for me, and I don't want to take too much time about it, but it's well-deserved. When we switched to Skyward a couple years ago as a district, then we had all of our platforms that then had to connect to Skyward. So every textbook we use, all of our food service, all those things had to connect. And so I kept going. We'd had issues anytime you have a new student information system. So I would keep going to Trey and go, who needs to fix this? That's Arden. Who needs to fix this? Arden. Who needs to update the textbooks? Arden needs to update textbooks. And so it was nonstop. Literally, Arden was the only person, and I was terrified that if she just decided to say goodbye, I had no idea what we were going to do. So that's not a good business management plan either.
Go find
So.
her. Any comments or questions? Go to number 5.
All right, number 5, Eagleville Football Scoreboard. Principal Tim Pettigo is requesting to replace the existing football scoreboard with a new one. Cost for the replacement is approximately $29,000 and will be funded through the football club and private donations. This request is at no cost to the board. One new support pier will be needed due to the increase in size of the sign. Engineering and Construction has reviewed the request and approves.
Any questions or comments? Number 6.
6, afternoon dispatch and routing assistant. Transportation request to fund an afternoon dispatcher routing assistant from existing transportation funds. This individual will be responsible for communicating all afternoon route changes to parents and schools. This individual will cover all extended afternoon dispatch for power hour routes, and this individual is needed due to the increased ridership of students this school year. Trey, how many do we have that ride a day, roughly an average, do you know?
It's close to 30,000 now. It's a bunch.
And so we have 7 people in our transportation department, and so if you have a couple routes go down, the amount of time to record something and go out, and then people will complain because they call and they don't necessarily get someone to answer right away. It's because there are only 7 people handling that many students transfer.
How much more is this going to cost, the decision?
It's not going to cost, we're funding it through existing funds in our transportation department.
Okay.
We've been able to, full disclosure, we've been able to cover some of our growth routes with existing buses simply because we couldn't get additional contractors to take the routes. So we've been covering them with multiple buses, we've paid them more, but it's less than what the new route would have cost, so we've built up a little bit of money left, and because we're starting this at the first of the year, it's a half a year salary, so that's how we're able to pay for it. We use an existing fund, so it's no addition to the budget at all.
I'll tell you, walking the dog in the morning gives me a new perspective because there's about 50 students that live in my little area that catch the bus. And I mean, it's amazing. I mean, we're 130 units of condos. I'm not sure how the tall and skinnies are, but it's about 50 students. It's amazing. So y'all do a great job. Thank you.
Well, thank you for looking into hiring someone to let parents know whether kids are late, not coming when they're supposed to be coming. And so, because that happens a lot.
It does.
And my son is one that is picked up. Sometimes the bus comes once, has to leave them behind because they've got too many kids and they got to go back, drop them off, and then hopefully I'm praying, oh, please remember to come back and get them. So that's great.
That is part of what we do right now. It's not the fun side, but it is the way we cover routes.
Are we short bus drivers as well? Is that another area where we're hurting?
Right now, we are not short contractors. There are a couple of contractors that are short drivers. We don't actually have any drivers as employees. They're all employees of our contractors. We have some single route contractors, and we have some contractors who have multiple routes, anywhere from 2 to 11 or 12. They are responsible providing the drivers for those routes. We are in much better shape than our surrounding counties. Do we have issues? Yes. Right now, if you had a bus go down, we would use probably 2 different other routes that are adjacent to it to pick up the slack. Per their contract, it's up to them to cover their routes, but in the instance that they don't, we assist.
Thank you.
Number 8.
I think we're in 7. Yeah,
The bus instructor.
Bus inspection coordinator customer service, so transportation request to fund a bus inspection coordinator customer service from existing transportation funds. This individual will be responsible for coordinating and maintaining documentation for the annual bus inspections. This individual will log all failed and passed inspections. This individual will assist in answering a high number of parent, driver, and school calls to ensure that problems are identified and corrective action is taken. This individual is needed due to the need for tracking bus inspections for contractors and school activity buses. So that was an issue, it's something we needed to address.
Same thing, covered out of existing funds, no additional funding required.
All right, number 8, Trey, land update. Like you or Jeff or somebody.
Well, Mr. Reed and I met with the property owner that owns the property adjacent to Smyrna High week before last. He is agreeable to sell a portion or all of the property to us if we're so interested. He has agreed, if the board wants us to hire someone to do a property appraisal to verify what the property is valued at, and then he will make a determination whether that suits him or not. That's kind of where that property sits. So we would need some direction on if we want to hire an appraisal to get a value and potentially pursue that piece of property. Since it is not on our scheduled property for a previous school, it would be something that if we were to decide to go to the county commission for approval. We're also continuing, I have also had continuing talks with the property owner on Veterans Parkway. I have sent that piece of property to our engineers to see if they can give me a preliminary layout, kind of like what we did at Blackman. Acreage-wise, it's enough for 2 schools. In talking with Mr. Morgan and the proximity to the city elementaries, we would not recommend potentially looking at it as an elementary location because there is a city school close to it, and we're pretty much surrounded by the city limits. It is a good location for a middle school, something that we would recommend. So I want to see what the engineer sends back to us. I have had conversation with that owner. They are willing to sell all or a portion. So I'd like to see what the engineer comes back with to see what that portion is. I've discussed typically for a middle school, it's somewhere between 35 and 40 acres. They are agreeable. They own 70 acres. They are willing to split it if we only wanted to buy 35 or 40. I'd like to continue to look at it as well if the board is agreeable with that as well.
Where is that at? You said Veterans, what's the?
It's Veterans between 231 and, I just went blank. Give me just a second and I'll tell you.
So, board members, I've asked when land is sent to Trey to be brought before the board members, I don't expect we're going to buy any of this. We still have the Beatty property to take care of. We still have the 5 annexes. But we also need to we need to have our bench for land available, and we already need to know what we have. So that was the purpose behind him looking into that.
And Trey, what are you saying as far as like, if we're looking at future growth and the best way to plan that out, if this Veterans Parkway option were to open up for a middle school, then because of the proximity that it is to Plainview and the issues that it has there, that we have out Plainview where we can't build 2 schools, it may make more sense to put a high school out toward Plainview on that property and save some of the additional cost of prepping the land.
I'm sorry, I was looking at something and not listening to your question.
Just kidding, I wasn't even
apologize.
talking. I was just saying, as far as this Veterans Parkway goes, you mentioned putting a middle school versus an elementary school there, even though it has, room for both, but because the proximity to the city schools and such, it'd make more sense for a middle school. Then potentially out at Plainview, because of some of the issues with the land there, even though we have it available, it then might make more sense to be looking at is a potential high school location to save us the funds of reworking the land.
That is a potential request, yes. We haven't done an analysis, but that would be something that we would look at, yes, sir.
What, on the one out by Smyrna, the property beside Smyrna High School, what would you think would be most useful to the board or recommend to the board as far, obviously not another high school, so would it be a middle, elementary?
With the proximity to Smyrna Middle, I would see that location more of a choice school, maybe a potential magnet school or an art school, something like that. You're going to have to be very careful. TDOT is not going to be very amicable to giving us another exit out of that piece of property because you're getting up close to the bridge at Chicken Pike.
Yeah.
Right.
They're not going to be looking at that as a potential second turnout. So with a single turnout being Bulldog Drive, we would want to keep it to where it would be something of a choice that we could adjust their bell time so that they're not in competition with each other. And an elementary K4, 5, 6 magnet where the bell time is earlier, they would be gone before the high school dismissed, and they would be in before the high school came in. So something along that line, and then that could potentially open up the possibility. We've thrown 3 or 4 things on the wall. You could then go maybe potentially move the K6 magnet from Thurman Francis to there, and then take Thurman Francis and remodel it for a potential north end high school magnet location. That's just
Or alternative school.
alternative school. Could be a number of things, but it could open up a lot of possibilities. We haven't really nailed it down. It's a good location. It's a good piece, but from an elementary, middle, or high traditional school, I would say not.
No, because we have Thurman Francis on the north end, there's a long time constituents have asked for a 9 through 12 art school. Yes, and Thurman Francis has a very, very small auditorium, and it's an art school. So they can't have everyone.
They don't
if
have
they
an
have
auditorium.
Yeah, they don't have an auditorium.
At all.
It's probably about as big as a
Gym,
gym.
stage, or
Yeah, so, but,
gymatorium.
yeah, my plan is to get enough property and everything. We're not going to buy it. Obviously, we're not going to have the money, but to look at these things and try to see where we can go, because we've got the plan here, we've got our deck here. We need to put some plans together.
What about the property over in Smyrna? There's like 65 acres. Couldn't we use some of that land to build a choice school there?
You're talking about Smyrna Elementary's
I think
property?
that's where it's at.
There is quite a bit of property there. That would be probably the largest in the Smyrna area, and I'd have to pull it up to look at it as well. But the land at Stewartsboro is probably not conducive because it's on the backside. It's more industrial. So it would probably be Smyrna Elementary.
And there's a big creek that goes,
There is a creek there. Some of it is a floodplain, but is there potentially property there that could be? The answer is yes.
How many acres do you need for a smaller school, like a magnet school?
It depends on the size of the magnet school that you all want. If you use the size of a typical elementary, 25 to 30 acres. If you used a middle school size, 35 to 40. The second thing you would have to think is it a magnet school, or are you going to provide sports?
yeah, that's another thing we don't want to get into.
I'm not looking at going out any further than we are now. Going up does cost more at this time. Keeping our one-story floor plans that we have for elementary and middle are cheaper than 2 stories.
Because if we're thinking about doing a multi-use type, a choice school, I would think that we will want to look into the inventory we already have, if we can do that. And there's quite a few acres out there. So if there's a possibility of doing something with those acres that we have, then that would be, I would think, a better use of our investment and time.
The property on Veterans is just past Jurgen Road, almost across from the city elementary.
Mr. Lee, I did speak with Brian Hercules about the piece of property next to Smyrna Elementary, because we thought we owned that piece of property, but Smyrna owns that property.
No, ma'am.
No, the city doesn't own that?
No, the city doesn't own it either.
Okay.
They lease it for practice fields. It is
practice,
all
okay.
owned by Mr. Abnon.
Oh, he owns that as well?
All of it.
Okay. I know he's going through and buying up a bunch of property now, so, okay, thank you.
One thing I'd like to mention, talking about land and all, it's great. We need to be focused on land too, but we have got to get back on our building program. We are not focused enough on our building program. With what we're showing on our building program, we're not building another school to open until 2025. That's going to put us at 5 years since we built the school. Guys, that don't work in Rutherford County. We have, for years, the last decade I know, tried to build 2 elementary schools, a middle school, and a high school every 4 to 5 years. And we're about to go 5 years and not even build a school, not even open one. So we better get refocused here and start looking at building new schools and get this back on our agenda. We need to be looking at this pretty regularly, because even if we went to the bond market and got it approved to build a new school, we'd still be looking at 2025 probably before it would open up. So that's just something I think we need to be focused on.
Number 18?
All right, number 18, financial report. So you have a large portion of financial report, and I'm not going to go over all of this, but we're going to go over the revenues and expenditure. We do this every month. But I also wanted you to have, and I'm going to go over how it's organized, the way that the printouts work, because we're about to hit budget season, and I want you to have a working knowledge of what we're actually looking at for our budget season. So if you will, this is 2 pages. It says Rutherford, and it should be on top, because I think I've tried to go back and put it there, but it's Rutherford County Government Summary Financial Statement, November 2022, and it has 141 General Purpose School Fund. You'll see revenues, and you'll see current property tax as the very first one. Is everybody there?
Yep.
Okay. So you will see this is our revenue account code, or all the 4 numbers over to the left. This is our 141, our general purpose school fund budget. And you will see these are what we are estimating to bring in. You'll see what we've actually brought in, what % of the budget we have brought in, and then our monthly average. Property tax, huge month is in December. This is running out of November's summary financial statement, so that will be much increased over the next couple months, but that is low right now when you look at that. If you look at a couple other ones, just to point out, you will see local option sales tax. So if you go to 40210, we budget at $93,200,000 to bring in. You'll see we have already brought in $33 million. You will see what we're estimating is $7.7 million, and last month we actually brought in $8.2 million. And so sales tax continues to trend in the right direction. The one below that's the exact same way, and that's kind of what I'm looking at as I'm looking at estimate for the average, and then actual, is it up or is it down from what we estimated, and that usually gives us a little bit of extra revenue. Another one to look at, to highlight, is 46511. This is basic education program. You will see our estimate average a month. We estimated $22.2 million to come from the State Department. We actually brought in 26.4, and that's because of the explosive growth that we are having. All that to say, we are budgeted in a deficit. I'm hoping with this and some others that we won't actually hit that $28 to $30 million deficit. It just depends on how things continue over the second semester. Inflation has hurt us just like it's hurt other areas as well. And we're, with some of our positions, especially maintenance and custodial, having to pay overtime within those line items to get things working. But I wanted you to kind of see the big buckets that we're looking at are that current property tax, the local option sales tax, and then the BEP. Those are the big ones we look at to see where we are. If you'll flip over to the second page, the very top of that just shows you again the budget estimate. It summarizes everything that was on that last page, just it prints out at the top, so that we budget estimate at $38.7 million a month, and we're actually bringing in right now 41.7 for the month. So again, doing a little bit better than we anticipated. The next one are our expenditures. And so these are, you have a whole lot of other documents that, again, we're not going to go through. I just wanted you to see what they were, because these are going to be our line items as we start in our accounts, as we start going through the budget season, and they should line up. So you'll see 71,100. That is our biggest one because these are ones that involve our general education programs, teachers, textbooks, all those different types of things. You will see that, again, 266 million was our estimate. What we are looking to expend is 22 million. Last month, we actually expended 24 million. And so that we're expending over what we budgeted. That is more than likely due to some of our increased costs that we've had. But as long as that's why it's important to have a safety or a healthy fund balance that in the event things come in, we need to be able to cover that. But luckily, we're kind of at a wash because of what we're bringing in. But each one of your printouts that's a larger document corresponds with one of these expenditure lines. So if you were to look at, if you can find the one, this is the only one to show you just as a summary. It is probably the largest stapled copy that you have, I believe. Yeah, it's the largest stapled copy you have. It should say 141 and then account number 71100. And it looks like it's got a whole bunch of spaces because, again, that's just the way that it prints out. And this correlates, it isn't a further just analysis of that entire expenditure account of 71100. It shows you all the different line items within 71100. So that one account covers regular education teachers, career ladder, educational assistants, continues and goes through benefits, medical insurance. It then goes into textbooks, software, and it continually goes through all of these. And again, you'll see on the next page, then goes to 71150, which is your next expenditure line item for alternative education. So again, just wanted you to have a synopsis because this will be kind of the last big month that you will have before we start talking about budget. So I want you to at least have time to see where some of these things line up. So I hope that's helpful.
Thank you for printing these out. This is great.
Brian, anything you want to add to that? I probably did a good enough job of knowing just enough to get myself in trouble.
No, you actually did really good. I am going to say that, and I know all these people sitting here at this table have heard me say that we were going to do it 3 months ago, but we are actually about to post expenditure line items and descriptions on our website that will help you understand once you're going through those and see line items, what all they are accounted for. So it's just another training tool for our departments so they can understand a little bit better as far as, you know, what is salaried line items, what's a non-salaried line item, what all goes into each and every one of them. So it's more of a training tool. I've been promising them for a while now, but, you know, between several things coming up in between then and now, it's kind of delayed it. So we hope to get it put out at least either before we go on break or right after we get back. So,
Can I ask a favor? When that is posted, can you send that link to all of us?
yes, definitely.
Great. Thank you.
Because it's all in the chart of accounts, I'm sure, and with the regulations and the, that's all required, so yeah.
And that is
Yeah, it'll be under our finance page. So, but I can send the link out for sure.
is that okay?
Can I ask too, just
Budgets, yeah.
looking at this just kind of jumped out. I'm just trying to understand. When we have stuff listed, like there's alternative instruction listed, and then there's alternative instruction program, but they have some of the same subcategories, like what the difference is between those two?
So is there a specific number on there that you can tell me? Because I memorize things by numbers.
I'm sorry.
Accountants.
So the alternative instruction is 71150.
Okay.
And then the alternative instruction program is 72215.
Okay, so one of them is for your direct instruction for your alternative programs. The other one's for your support services for your alternative program.
Okay.
And here's kind of the way that I've always thought about it. If you see 7.1, then you were talking about things that are directly impacting students on a day-to-day basis. So teachers, educational assistants, textbooks. If you see 7.2, then those are things that are support staff. You may have different people who are working with them, but they're not necessarily the ones that are day-to-day instruction with the kids. Great question.
Good to know.
Did I butcher that one too?
Good to know.
Is lunch debt on here too, or is that still exponentially
It's in the
growing?
380,000, I believe, right now. It's a separate account. I'll bring that one for you on Thursday.
That'd be great.
Insurance?
We have anything else, Dr. Anthony?
No, the county general canceled today, the meeting for Thursday. That was it.
Thank you. What else do you have for us? Director's
Yeah, just the director's update, just quickly, something that gets a whole lot of attention that I just wanted to be transparent about was around library books. And so that gets a lot of attention, so I wanted to let you know kind of what our procedures are. So we, of course, follow the Age Appropriate Materials Act of 2022. So our board adopted the policy 4.103, I believe that's correct, that models 4.403, that goes through and designates if you have a complaint, what you go through and who can file a complaint, all those different types of things. But usually, as a school system, we're able to handle a lot of things before it gets to the complaint procedure. And that's what we want to be able to do, is handle things before you have to go through all of the red tape that takes so much longer. So when you are looking at library books, so our media specialist librarians are the ones that are charged with overseeing their library collection in their buildings. And so when we have a book that gets brought to us, or one that is in a neighboring district, because that's what the most recent one was, there was a neighboring district that had some library book issues, and so it was brought to our attention. We then go to the media specialist librarians at the school and ask them to review that. And so when they review that, them being over and being charged with that, they can then go and review the book without it having to go through the take 30, 60 days of review, leaving it on the shelf, all those different types of things. It is a very fine balance, because you do then get into the argument and the discussion around media specialists not wanting to feel like we're trying to censor their books, but also making sure that things are age appropriate and appropriate for our students. And so they have that option to be able to review, and usually we use one of our employees on staff, who I won't mention her name because she is not a paid person in that position, but she was a former media specialist, and she kind of serves as our go-between to go and talk to our media specialists. If you have a book that is of concern, if you will let me know, and then we will kind of go and talk to it first, see if it's on any of our catalogs anywhere. That's our first step. Then we go and ask our media specialists to review the book. If you see a book and you see that it says that it's checked out, especially after you bring a book that you want us to look at, then a lot of times that book is being checked out by the media specialist, because there's no way for us to show that, oh, it's been checked out. And my initial thought was, how in the world? We brought this book to someone's attention last Wednesday, I believe, and within 2 hours of me asking somebody, the book has been checked out 4 times in the 12 years it's been in the library, and all of a sudden in the 2 hours I was looking for it, someone checked it out. It was the media specialist that checked it out to themselves to look at it. And so if you see that it says lost or checked out, that means it's more than likely being for review. And so I just wanted to be transparent and know that those are things that we have. We have asked to look at, to see a couple things about librarians in Tennessee. So in order to be a media specialist in Tennessee, you actually have to have a master's in library information science and pass the praxis. So it is an additional endorsement past your additional teaching license. So you have to have that to be in a librarian position. As of fall of 2022, we have 542,540 books in our school libraries. When books are purchased, because this is a question that gets asked a lot, how do books get into our libraries? So we have multiple groups that we look with, and I have several of them. We're always looking. We have to have a procedure for this by the Age Appropriateness Act. So we look at notable children's books, the book list, School Library Journal, Association for Library Service to Children, best books for young adults. We're always looking to add to those that we're looking to review, but sometimes you do take the words of publishers, and sometimes books that don't need to be there end up. Our media specialists get put in the avenue. They get money from BEP, depending on the grade band, depends on how much they get per student. High school is about $3 and something per student. And so they get that money in October, and then they usually have to have it spent by guidelines in January. So there's not a lot of time for them to review each individual book outside of what we can find and what is recommended and what student interests are. But again, when books come up that we need to look at, that's what we're able to do, is to look at it, if you'll just be transparent and let us know.
When you go through that process, and the librarians have looked at it and they've decided they're going to take it out, do we have anything put in place that going forward, if that were to come in from one of those suppliers and they went to put it on the card catalog, that would flag it and prevent it from being put back into the
Yep, so we will start developing a list if it's something that we've removed from a school, that we will make sure that a librarian has looked at, that it's not a banned book list, but it's one that we're not looking at to purchase in the future. So that's part of the procedures that go with that Age Appropriateness Act that we have to put in place as a district. But right now, currently, no, there is not. It's up to the media specialist and their professional learning communities to talk to each other. And I think our policy actually puts in place who can and who cannot go through and make some of those recommendations. And so that'll be something we look at. Because you're right, that's where I worry about is if you have an issue with a book at a school, we have 8 comprehensive high schools. And so if you're looking at it, we don't want to have to sit there and go through all the different review portions of it for each individual if we're looking at it from a school system. And so we don't want to go through and look at one of these from our individual schools and then have to go back and, oh, we purchased this book again and we didn't need to. Does that say it's going to be perfect? I just told you the timeline. No, there's probably going to be errors that are going to be made, but we address those as they come up.
Do they go through do they get a catalog?
Most of it's online and publisher recommendations, so they use Follett, Bound to Stay Bound, and then Ingram, which is our local company, are the main 3 that we purchase through. And when you hear about reviewing textbooks, know that when we're reviewing textbook or reviewing library books, it's not all for controversial or age-appropriate materials. A lot of what we spend our time reviewing library books for is about when was the last time it was checked out, how old is the collection of our library, because some of our older schools, the average age of their library books are very old compared to where they need to be. The other portion we look to see, make sure the books are still bound, and a trend that has happened over the last decade is much more in nonfiction than fiction, so we're probably about 60-65% nonfiction and 35 to 40% fiction, and that has been a shift over the last couple years nationwide. And that goes along with the informational text that you hear a lot of things about with students learning to read.
How do parents access the form for the request for reconsideration?
Yep, it is the very first thing on our curriculum instruction website. You click on it, it's for that one, and instructional materials are right there back to back.
I had a parent ask me.
And it's also on the FAQs.
Yep, yeah, on our FAQs document is there too.
Yep, it's pretty visible.
Is it, do they have to print it out, or is it digital? They can just fill it in?
I don't remember.
I think
Yeah,
it's
it's,
yeah.
It's saved as a digital PDF, but you have to print it off and fill it out.
Is there a way to make that digital? I mean, I'm just thinking for people maybe that don't have a printer.
Is that the form that you redid? I think at the beginning of this, there was one you said was so old it was still like
yes,
a
the
typewriter font.
Yes, that's one of the 2, yes. That is one of the forms that was redone, yes.
Did you make changes, or is that still the original?
No, it's still the original
The
one.
original, okay.
Yep. And state law doesn't say what has to be on that form. We just have to publish a form that says this is how they, and then you go through the process of review that's set up in that 4.403. Sorry, I know that was fun, but I feel like we need to go ahead. It's kind of the elephant in the room sometimes we don't ever talk about, but sometimes we just need to talk about it. We want to make sure all of our, and this is partially my own blame as well. In my former position, curriculum and instruction, we were working on going one-to-one, and without adding additional staff members, we put all device checkout inventory on our high school, middle school media specialist. And so there's more room for error when you're not supplementing somebody with pay and adding extra duties. And so that's something we're gonna have to look at with positions, not extra media specialists, but technology people, so that we can get our media specialists back to working on the things they need to.
I'd really like to find out with whatever our card catalog system is, if there isn't a way to flag a title so that if it were to try to be put back in, it's kind of an alert. I think that would be, I mean, I feel like we're responsible to some degree for making sure there isn't.
Yep, I'll check with our vendor, and just about every district in the country uses Destiny, which is a Follett product, so I'll check with Destiny to see. I'm sure we're not the first district that has that request either.
Well, I don't want to waste everybody's time redoing something 2 years from now that we've already addressed one time either.
Yeah, redundant.
So, Dr. Sullivan, I checked on the form. It's a little more complicated to make it a pure digital form like a Microsoft.
They have to sign it.
Well, it has to go to the principal of their school, and so you can't just have it going to one person. There's 50 possibilities. But there are ways to fill out a PDF digitally that you don't have to print it out, and then you can attach that and send it.
We could probably put on there, if you have questions, please contact this person, and they can help.
We're always available to print it off for them if they need a physical copy.
Okay, thank you.
Who's the vendor that does the system?
I'll let Destiny.
There should be, well, I mean, I can't speak for the vendor, but there should be able to have some kind of control. May require some extra to get that, if it's not something that's provided within whatever it is that we are under the contract. But, so depending on that.
Do you want to present Thursday?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, thank you. General discussion. Any general discussion? Anyone opposed to being adjourned?
Oh, update on the federal grant individual, have you?
Do you know where that federal grant, I think we're still waiting on ESSER approval, because ESSER 3 hasn't been approved by the State Department yet, correct?
No, we actually had to put the once the ESSER 3 for the salary study is approved, then.
That's right.
Then we got to push
back.
the button. We're ready to push the button. It's just we're waiting on approval for that.
Yep.
That to go through.
So that's the next step. So we are waiting to, we had submitted ESSER 3.0 when these extra things for the salary study came back for those extra funds. We reopened. And so now, once this is hopefully approved on Thursday, we'll resubmit to the State Department. But we were talking about something that we needed them for yesterday and probably today that we could have used them for. So the sooner the better.
Yeah.
Because we could use them right now.
Any further discussion? We are adjourned. Thank you.